Okay. In progress. Okay, we are recording. It is 4:04 p.m. Welcome to the Boulder Junction Access District Travel Demand Management and Parking Meeting. It is Wednesday, July 19th, and I will call roll. Susan Krant.
Here.
Jennifer Shriver will not be attending. Rebecca Michelle, and that might be her. Yep, she's in the lobby, so I'm gonna bring her in. Rebecca is well, we'll wait till she is. Hi, Rebecca. We were just calling roll, so I'll mark you as here. Ryan Cook.
Here.
Kevin Knapp.
Here.
And Robin Roman.
Here.
Okay, and so I'll reflect in the minutes that we do not have a quorum for BJAD TDM. We do for parking. And then I'll turn the meeting over to our chair for procedural items.
Okay, so I think the first thing is the approval of the minutes. So would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Thank you. Anybody like to second that?
Sure, I can second.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, passes. Next on the agenda, keep going back. Procedural items, approval of the public participation. Do we have any members of the public?
We do not.
Okay. Consent agenda. Do people need a minute to look at the consent agenda? And then somebody can make a motion.
I think we'll just want to discuss if anybody has anything to discuss. I don't think we're
Yeah.
approving.
Oh, okay. We don't approve her.
Nothing,
Okay.
nothing has been updated since we got this form last week, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Nothing's-
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or discussion items?
Nothing for me about consent or the fund financials. Everything looked clear.
No one else? I have to keep going. I only have one screen. I have to keep going back and forth. Okay. Seeing no discussion, we'll move on. Let me get to it again. Sorry. That's not it. Okay. Next item. Should be a lot easier with two screens. Going back to the front. Fund financials. The fund will not be discussed unless there are questions proposed. Does anybody have any questions on the fund financials? Get back to seeing
It could
everybody.
be fun too.
They could be fun. Okay, now I can see everybody. Anybody have any questions on the fund financials?
No.
Okay, all right, then moving on to matters from staff.
So we have,
Correct.
we have Chris Haglund presenting on the Lime Scooters expansion.
Okay, Chris Haglund, I guess you're up.
Yes, Chris Haglund, Principal Planner. Thank you for having me, and I will share my screen. I just have a very brief presentation. Thing. what is it? F5, is it? There we go. All right, thank you for having me. I just want to give you an update on the Lime Scooter expansion plan, which is happening very soon. Just to kind of give you an update on the numbers. We had a really good year during our pilot season. So we were just operating Lime scooters east of 28th Street. So BJAD was included in the pilot area. We had 288 scooters deployed during that time. We started with 200, and they were able, through achieving certain triggers of trips per vehicle per day, increase their fleet twice. You can usually do that by, according to our contract, by 20%. And so they were able to go up to 288. Over 115,000 trips were taken during the pilot. Trips averaged just over a mile. Most device throughout the year, they averaged 1.5 trips per device per day. And, you know, on the really good side, out of all those 115,000 trips, we only had 4 injury-related crashes. Based on these numbers, City Council did support in January expanding Lime operations citywide. Since that time in January, we've been working with Lime on developing a proposal and a plan for deploying citywide. We know this is going to be an iterative and phased approach. We're not going to get it right the first time on how we have all the different zones and where this parking is needed, but we know that over time we'll hone in, gather data, monitor the situation, and eventually have a really well-tuned system. Right now, we're looking at expanding the fleet citywide in mid to late August, kind of corresponding when CU students go back to school. But at that same time, we are waiting on CU to make a final formal decision on allowing scooters onto their main campus. Their staff is working with Lime and the city towards that goal, and we're operating as if it is happening, but we still have yet to have a formal decision from CU. We did alert City Council and a heads up last Friday of the timing of this expansion. There's a lot of different technology that is at our disposal with the Lime scooters to control both their operations and their use throughout the city. With the expansion too, we're also expanding the number of equity zones. So these are our lower income or underserved areas of the city where we pay special attention to marketing and working with our community connectors to raise awareness of the scooters, their use, and Lime's low income program, which provides discounted rides to those that qualify. And so there's a number of new equity zones as we've gone from our pilot area into the citywide. But when we look at the technology that we have, mostly it's this geofencing technology, and there's 4 primary zones that can be created. So there are no-go zones. So if a scooter crosses the boundary into a no-go zone, it slowly ceases to operate and comes to a stop. Outside of the city limits, if you see this map here, the kind of the grayed out area around the city limits, those are all no-go zones. And then there are no-go zones within the city limits as well. Some of those include things like cemeteries, ball fields, Pearl Street Mall, places where scooters are just not allowed to operate. But Open Space and Mountain Parks has made it very clear they do not want to see any scooters on the trail. So that's why the limit is set like this around the city limits to prohibit scooters from going outside of the city limits onto open space and mountain park trails. A second type of geofencing are slow zones. So these are areas in which the scooter user crosses the boundary into a geofence slow zone. The scooter will go from its max of 15 miles an hour, and those can be set at 12, 10, or 8 miles an hour. 8 miles an hour is pretty slow, and it gets, kind of a little difficult to operate the scooter. So we're looking at probably using 10 miles an hour as our slow zone speed. And we have a number of these in downtown, University Hill, likely to have a slow zone for Chautauqua area. But they're generally, it's where we have higher concentrations of pedestrians, so we want to slow the scooters down. There are also no parking zones. So these are areas where you're not allowed to end a trip and leave your scooter. And so a lot of these are not on like the multi-use path system themselves, because we don't want a lot of scooters just kind of left on different areas of the multi-use path system. And then probably the most important geofencing technology is the mandatory parking zones. So this is when a scooter user enters into a geofenced area of a mandatory parking zone. They are not allowed or permitted to end their trip unless they park their scooter in a designated location. We're calling these lime groves. So these essentially are painted lime green rectangles on, ends of sidewalks, also with delineators, reflective delineators on the corners of those, with the lime logo and parking as part of it. This is very important because when we have these highly commercial areas with lots of pedestrian activities, we don't want to see the clutter of scooters. So we have mandatory parking zones kind of all around the downtown, basically from Spruce down to Arapahoe, and essentially 9th to 14th on the lower end, and all the way, I think, till 18th on the more northern part of Cajun. We also have a mandatory parking zone on University Hill, and CU's main campus is essentially one large mandatory parking zone. So we're currently in the process of identifying lime grove locations within those areas. We're looking at probably going to have about 22 in the downtown area, about 12 in University Hill, probably a couple at Chautauqua. And there's some other places where, we may have to create some mandatory parking zones. 29th Street Mall is one of those areas where we're looking at perhaps having the need to create some mandatory parking zones and some lime groves. I did provide a link in the presentation to our map that we're using. So I've sent that on to Lisa. She can send that on to all of you. You can click on the map and see all those geofenced areas and where they are. Currently, right now, there are not any geofenced locations within the Boulder Junction area. So that's something we'd love to get your feedback on at the end of this presentation. I also just wanted to share with you that we do have, we've created a lot of materials around scooter use and how to safely use scooters, and information about where different vehicles are allowed to operate, like the scooters. Scooters, for example, they're not supposed to be on sidewalks unless there's not an adjacent bike lane, for example, a facility that they can use. They are allowed on the streets and in the bike lanes and on our multi-use path system. So just a few questions for you to consider are, is there a need to employ any geofencing tools in the Boulder Junction area? So this would include any no-go zones, slow zones, or parking zones. And then should we consider any mandatory parking zones, and then the need to install lime groves? One place I was just thinking of is perhaps near the RTD station, and in that plaza having a designated area, maybe by the B-cycles, where you could have a designated line parking area. So that's just an example. But we'd love to get your feedback on that as we continue to build out this map of all these geofence zones. And thank you.
Thanks, Chris. You were going in and out, so I turned off my video. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? Robin?
It's not really a question, but if you're asking for feedback, first of all, I want to thank you because the last presentation, I feel like what y'all have done has taken in every single thing that I had concerns about from our last presentation. So it's just an amazing amount of work. So thank you for that. I'm a huge fan of mandatory parking zones. So if you are taking feedback, I do love the idea of having it by the B cycles. On campus, we have the B cycles. And I think having a centralized location where everybody knows this is where I leave my alternative forms of transportation is hugely important. I would also like to see slow zones across the plaza so that people that are actually walking around can not be concerned about somebody going, you know, substantially faster by them. But yeah, thank you.
All right. So I just want to, so in terms of the mandatory parking zone that you would like to see, it would be concentrated in that plaza area. So if you're ending your trip near like the Roadhouse and the Hyatt and there, then we would have some designated lime groves.
Yeah, I
But
think
not-
that makes sense.
Okay. And then, yeah, I mean, we can look at slow zones also, you know, basically we could make the mandatory parking zone also a slow zone. So they would have the same geofenced area. What's really nice when the scooters do enter the slow zones, the scooters make a sound and then on the little device shows a little, on their little screen shows a turtle. And, you know, then they start slowly slowing down. So it gives them a good cue that they're in a different place and they should behave differently.
Rebecca?
Yes, thank you. I was also going to add my support for mandatory parking zones, but I would actually like to call out that, you know, the district is getting larger. It would probably be nice to have, you know, an additional parking zone up by Spark, right? You know, so that people can hop on a scooter from there to get down to the Roadhouse, to get down to RTD, or even over to, you know, our shopping centers, the Whole Foods and everything else without having to first walk the full length of the neighborhood. And then if we go across the street to Pearl, there's, you know, the B-cycle station there at Griffith. That may be another really great parking zone as well. So I know it can be cumbersome to like park a B-cycle there and then have to cross the light. It's a very slow light for pedestrians. Anything that we can do to kind of reduce that kind of conflict there between pedestrians and cars would be great.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Oops. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, next. Get back to my agenda.
Thank you for the feedback.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Thanks for presenting.
Yep.
Oh, I'll jump in one more thing. I haven't really been on the ditch trail inside Rob. That may be another area for slow zone.
Okay.
Okay, 2024 budget, and I don't see who's presenting this.
It's Chris.
That will be me. This is Teresa Pinkel.
Okay,
Go ahead and share my screen. All right. First and foremost, I wanted to introduce to the commission our new budget analyst, Christopher Scott, who joined us just on Monday. So you'll see a little bit more from him as we move forward, but just wanted to give him an introduction to the commission. So he's joining us this evening. As we run through the agenda, We'll kind of just cover some high-level overview of the general improvement district's roles and responsibilities, priorities, and key accomplishments for the last year. Look at the overall budget process, give a little bit of context for the entire community vitality budget, and then dive into the details of the parking and TDM, BJAD budgets. I know we don't have full quorums for BJAD TDM, but we do have some suggested motion language for the commission on the parking side to provide support for the proposal if that is appropriate. So as we look at the general improvement district, just wanted to again call to attention the roles and responsibilities for the commission, and that's providing parking and related improvements, improving access through the districts through various transportation options, maintaining and repairing other public assets in the district, improve the overall health and welfare of the area, and be a responsible steward of the public resources for the benefit of the entire city. I apologize, these are a little tiny, but based on all the feedback from you all, we're really focused in on enhancing district identity, branding, and wayfinding in the Boulder Junction area, looking at support of the Boulder Junction Phase 2 initiatives, looking at enhancing transit options, neighboring community collaborations, looking at expanding those TDM offerings, and then looking at long-term capital planning. So we'll keep those in mind as we go through this. A couple of key accomplishments that we can highlight for this last year include a lot of great work that's going on with our sign replacement project. We'll hear a little bit more about that later. We're moving forward with the branding and wayfinding implementation, and you can see the graphic on this slide is representative of some of those drawings, and we appreciate all of your input as that moves forward. We've had a great opportunity this year to partner with Boulder Transportation Connections to facilitate TDM promotion and activations within Boulder Junction through the function at Boulder Junction. Hopefully you guys have been able to participate in some of those activities, and we have a few more coming up this year. And then the great work that continues to move forward with Boulder Junction Phase 2. And now I just wanted to again provide a little bit of context. I think we went through some of this briefly, but just the overall strategy that we employ as we look at budgeting. And we're right now in the citywide budget development section. It'll move over to council for review and adoption, and then kind of starts us through this cycle as we've identified these key priorities and integrating them into our work plans as we move forward into 2024, looking at financial projections and strategic planning, and then ultimate budget development for the next year. So currently we're here in July with the budget being with the budget team for review, and we'll look forward to recommendations and approval from City Council here both in September and as far as review, and then actual approval and adoption of the budget in October. Just some context, community vitality has changed a little bit, and most of that change started last year, and now we're kind of full blown with our new work groups of special events and arts and culture. So just wanted to provide context for the overall department budget. We have the 4 general improvement districts, including BJAD TDM and BJAD parking, as well as the University Hill General Improvement District and the Central Area General Improvement District. As I mentioned, those 2 new work groups, the arts and culture and special events groups, are general funded within our department. And then we also have funds that we're deploying from ARPA, and then the CCS and CCRS is the Community Culture, Resilience, and Safety Tax. And that's primarily being expensed through our arts and culture work group. Just again, overview of the revenues and expenses. The majority of our revenues are coming from parking revenue and property tax. We do have in some of the districts rentals, leases, specific ownership tax, other revenues, and then on the expense side, our general categories of personnel, operating, internal services, which are going to be elements where we're paying into our computer replacement fund, for example. Right now, we're actually in the process of paying off our only existing debt that will be paid off in August, and that's associated with the KJIT or Central Area General Improvement District. And then we have some transfers. So this is the high level overview of the entire department budget. I'll just kind of bring to your attention that we do have a slight decrease in our overall operating budget. And the primary driver of that is we have some savings that'll come Kind of on the operating side, as we transition to a gateless platform in our downtown garages. Obviously, that debt is falling off, so that will be going back into the caged fund balance. Overall, we do have an increase in our overall capital improvement plan. I know there's some detail in the packet that was sent out, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. And so that's really what's driving our overall bottom line, including capital, with that 7.5% increase. And then again, these proposals are across the entire community vitality budget, but just wanted to bring them to your attention. We have submitted a request for a board specialist. So obviously we have you all of our wonderful BJAD commissions, as well as our UJIT and KJ commissions, as well as picking up the Arts Commission. And so we want to make sure that we've got adequate support for all of those functions. We're looking to build out our special events program and looking to repurpose some one-time funds that comes from a general fund transfer to employ a program coordinator. The Arts and Culture Work Group is looking to update their cultural plan. We had ongoing support to the Downtown Ambassadors. That was a pilot program that has received one-time funding in 2023, and we're looking to extend that and make it a permanent addition. And then our access management parking strategy program continues to move forward. There's ongoing evaluation that needs to be in place, and so that's an additional request. So as we hop into the BJAD specific budgets, we've got parking here. Just a couple things to know on property tax. The decrease that you're seeing there is primarily a realignment with where current assessments are. So some of the projections historically have been a little bit high, so we brought those down just in line with where the current assessment stands. Parking revenues, we've actually seen an increase, I think, as we're getting the Depot Square garage kind of normalized with the new gateless technology over there. As additional development comes, we are seeing increases in that parking revenue. And on the operating side, not a whole lot changing. The biggest drivers truly are those transfers. So the BJAD parking commission, or the fund, has been paying off a loan to the general fund associated with a lawsuit. And so the anticipated final payoff is in 2024, and it is a little bit lower than it's been in previous years. And then you'll see in 2023, there was a payment back to the Boulder Junction TDM for just a one-time loan related to some concerns with fund balance historically. And so that was paid off this year. So those expenses are coming down. And then we have approximately the same allocation for capital, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So an overall decrease in the overall expenditures due to those transfers. So I'll pause here for a minute. Any questions or concerns on the BJAD parking budget?
I will take one. What are the plans, and if there are not plans, why not, to actually reassign the on-street parking revenue back to the district to help pay off this capital?
And so which capital specifically are you referring to?
Like for the parking garage and stuff like that, right? So, you know, people who drive into the district are making a choice. They're either parking in the garage or they're parking on the street, but it's one parking district. And in my mind, all the revenue, even the on-street parking spaces, should go back to the district, not back to the general fund.
So, and I believe that's more closely tied to just the overall philosophy of the both transit area plan, as well as just the parking program holistically across the city, where that on-street revenue does go back into the general fund. So there's certainly room for conversation in terms of how those general funds are used and utilized within the district, ensuring that there's adequate and appropriate investment in the very districts that are generating those revenues. So certainly something that we keep in mind and keep part of the conversation as we're looking at the needs of the district.
Are those other districts are they levying a property tax mill on residences?
It's whatever properties are within those general improvement districts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like when we look at the capital, or like the fund balance planning, both districts show a surplus significantly over the next few years, I'd be curious, Rebecca, like what would we do with the additional money if the general fund was paying the district for parking revenues from on-street?
We would decrease the mill levy on residences who already have their own parking.
I see. So,
That
so we could
that
achieve
is my
without-
proposal and goal. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Understood. So we could even, with looking at the surplus without transfers in from the general fund, we could achieve potentially the decrease without requiring that from that other change, right? From the city, like they wouldn't have to pay us for on-street because we already have the surplus that we could over time reduce by reducing the mill levy. Am I making sense?
Are you asking me or are you asking Chris?
No, I was asking you, I think since we already show a
That
surplus.
does make sense. I will say that there's also an inconvenience portion of living in the district and having drivers park on the street and turnover and stuff like that. Again, I think as we look at the longevity of a fund, while we have a surplus now, we may not have a surplus in the future. And it just seems to fit, like from a topic perspective of, here's a parking district, we're managing parking, and part of managing parking is managing the on-street parking. So why isn't the on-street parking revenue coming back into the district? From a, property owner and resident neighbors, stuff like that, if we can achieve the mill levy decrease for residences on the parking side, regardless, that is also an excellent outcome. So.
Great, and I appreciate the comments. Chris Jones is not with us tonight. He's on vacation, but I will put these comments back to him. I know it's something that we have internally begun just exploring and looking at. I know it's been brought up in previous commission meetings. So it certainly is still something we're exploring and hope to have additional information here in the next few meetings that we meet with you all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I can just tack onto that really quick. I mean, I had the same comments, and it sounds like with Chris not being here, maybe tonight's not the night to dig into it, but the seems like we're at a place here where the mill levies can be reduced, if not eliminated. We have the fund balance at a good place. We're running surpluses through the budgets. We'll get through these big expenditures from the lawsuit and from the loan. And really for the parking district, there's not a lot of left there to operate this district. And I think that not only are the mill levy a burden on the residences, I think it's definitely a burden on the commercial properties that we're not achieving the vitality in the district based on the retail coming in and having to pay this additional mill levy expense without folks really understanding what that expense is going for.
Thank you for those comments. I'll certainly take them back to Chris and see what we can do to add some content in our next meetings.
Thanks.
So as we come through, again, just wanted to give a visual representation. Majority of the revenue still is coming through that property tax with parking revenues next. And then again, with those general fund transfers out, that will significantly decrease the expenses that we have. We've kind of talked through this, so let's go quickly. The explanations of kind of some of those changes. I think we've covered everything. So I will go ahead and jump over to the TDM. A few things I'll note here on the property tax side. We do have a number of properties that are receiving their certificate of occupancies. And so we'll see some additional pilot payments, which is why you see the increase on the property tax line. Again, that transfer in is no longer applicable. It's the one-time repayment. On the expense side, we're fairly flat in that change. And I'll just pop through here. So again, on the TDM side, the majority of that revenue is coming from property tax. With the majority of it going out through operating. So that operating line is obviously taking into account all of the TDM benefits, including B-cycle memberships, RTD, bus passes, the eco passes, and our Colorado car share subsidies. So covered that. I'll pop back. Any questions on the TDM budget? I just wanted to give a quick overview on the capital program. Again, there's some additional detail within the packet. I've highlighted the two that are relevant to the Boulder Junction Commission here. We do have money being set aside for capital improvements, going back to the priorities that were identified. The intent is to work with all of you to look at where we can build out a CIP specific to the district. And so that's where that top line is coming from. The cross-district consulting is a new initiative from all of the 4 general improvement districts, looking at connectivity and making sure that we have a good connection, good paths, good wayfinding, just congruency across those districts. So that's what you see there. And so each of the Boulder Junction commissions, or excuse me, funds are contributing. I believe it's 15,000 a piece for those ones. And so the 75,000 is just total across all of the districts.
So is that, I'm sorry, is that the capital line item here in each of the,
Yes, exactly.
okay, so what I see in the parking budget is capital is 115,000, and then the TDM, we have another 15,000. And
Yep,
so
so it's the combination of that first line that's on my screen, the Boulder Junction Public Improvements is the 100,000, and then the 15,000 from the cross-district consulting. And then the TDM is just the 15,000 from the cross-district consulting.
got it.
And I know I did put quite a bit of information. Were there any questions or concerns with any of the other capital improvements programs that I can just share insight on?
I'm going to ask a really basic question. So where does the Depot Square garage payments get accounted for?
And that's debt that the fund is not carrying. So I believe it's through the Depot Association, the owner association. So we have dues that are going over for that functioning, but the districts themselves don't have a debt service payment contributing to that garage currently.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Like I said, I know we don't have a full quorum on the TDM, but just have some suggested motion language if the BJED Parking Commission is comfortable with providing a recommendation for approving the budget.
I'm not on the parking commission, but are you, Kevin?
I'm on
I
the
am
parking
Parking
commission.
Commission, yes.
Yeah.
Oops, so maybe you should call a vote for it.
Yeah, so we'll vote to approve the parking and hold off on the TDM. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended budget for on the parking portion for BJED.
Thanks, Rebecca. Do we have a second?
I have a question before I second. While we approve this, even though we still don't have answers on changing the mill levy, does this lock us in for the whole year on those revenues?
The revenues would stand as they're just the mill levy. There's not a lot of flexibility to change the mill levy right now. So one of the things that's being explored is what other alternatives are at our disposal to address some of the concerns that have been brought by the commission. So it's something that's not, the conversation doesn't necessarily close right now for the 2024 year. It's just the means and the tools are still being identified to address those concerns.
Okay, thank you. I second the motion to approve the 2024 parking budget.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, I think that's everyone.
Thank you. And then I will do some follow-up with the best means to reach out to the TDM commission to approve or receive your recommendation for approval on that here just shortly. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Regan and Boulder Junction branding and wayfinding.
I think Christine is first, Sue, for the Boulder Junction on-street paid parking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, on-street paid parking update. I'm sorry, Christine.
You almost took my spotlight, Sue. Come on.
Sorry about that.
Just kidding. So I don't know if I've met all of you yet. I'm Christine Edwards. I joined CB about 2 months ago as the Senior Manager of Operations and Maintenance. So we'll see if we can make my computer work as it should. Hold, please. Here we go. And share. Do you guys see the screen? So that's the one you're looking at right now. Fantastic. Okay. So just to give you all a quick overview of what's going on, there's nothing to be voted on. We're just carrying out the, I think Sam came and gave you all a presentation a couple of months ago, letting you know about the signage refresh that was going on across the city of Boulder. That did happen in Boulder Junction. So I wanted to give you an update as to what happened and where it's showing up. So we have continued to move forward with the TDOT parking implementation plan as was put together in 2007. Here's the beautiful drawing that they expected would our little area would look like. And it turns out the reason why we put together TDOT, just a quick overview, back in 2007, the vision was that we were going to earn a very little bit of parking revenue from on-street parking, as well as the real intent about this design was to reduce the traffic impact of a higher density development area, as well as offer a variety of ranges of housing options and accessibility options in Boulder. So as y'all might recall, right here, there's been a lot of development in this area as well as up in this area. And the reason I show you that is I wanted to let you know that in these areas, these streets did not exist a while ago. And so now that they have been, now that the streets have been installed, we have gone through with this, with the re-signage project. We were being really efficient with tax dollars, making sure to do the signage all at one time because we did have old signage, but it wasn't great. So we have implemented the new signage all at one time. These new areas have the signs, and this is what they look like. But wanted to let you know that at this point, we are not currently enforcing those new areas. So I'll go back for just a second. On those orange streets, the signs have gone up. We are not enforcing yet. What we're doing right now is we're doing an education campaign. We're partnering with BTC, Boulder Transit Connections, I think, connectors, and we're partnering with them to make sure that all the tenants in the area know that these new areas will no longer allow free parking. I'll take you to the next step page. So we're working with the property managers to alert the tenants as to what's going on, when the change is going to happen. We don't anticipate it will be happening until later on this year, probably November-ish. We're working to get 4 new pay stations. We're wanting to install those in the area so it's easier to pay for parking. BTC is also going to be updating their websites with the benefits of living in BJED area, as well as the responsibilities of when you have a car, you have to pay to park it, and that there are parking spots available in some of the parking garages. It seems like some of the property managers may not have conveyed that to all the tenants, so we're taking the time now to give them an opportunity to change their parking habits. The property managers will also be sending notices to all the residences and all of the developers, all of the building owners, so they are, the business owners, so that they know what's going on. And then prior to the enforcement date, once we finally set it, we'll send for 2 weeks, we'll be putting notices. The enforcement officers will be putting notices on cars to let them know hey, things are changing. And then after that, we'll be issuing warnings for every car so that they know that things are changing. And then after the first warning, people will be getting citations. So it will be a ramp before anybody receives a citation on those particular streets. So that is the plan at this point. Does anybody have any questions or comments or feedback at this point? Okay.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I'll jump in. You know, at least the streets up in Spark have been there now for 3 years. So was there a conscious decision to wait until, 3000 Pro was finished, or?
Yeah, I would say that there was it a conscious decision? Maybe not. I think that during COVID, there was severe understaffing. We knew that the signage project was going to be going on, so we didn't want to do it a year prior to the whole revamp. So I think that there was a delay that was not awesome, but it did end up saving the city dollars in the long run. So it was just an unfortunate thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, ready to move on?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, now Regan and Boulder Junction branding and wayfinding.
Thank you, Sue. This will be a super brief update, as I know I gave an update last time and not much has changed since then, and it is in the consent agenda. But for the Boulder Junction wayfinding and signage project, wayfinding and branding project, we are again contracting with a vendor called E3 Signs. I mentioned this during the last meeting, but they are based out of Loveland, Colorado, and have a ton of experience working with different municipalities. So we're excited to be working with them. Currently, they are in the shop drawings and sampling phase, soon to enter into applying for permits. And so we're looking at install likely late summer. So right after Labor Day is kind of the current timeline that we're working with. And that's given that all things go smoothly with the permitting process. So, and the last thing I want to mention is there inevitably will be impacts from the construction, digging up the concrete, put the foundation or the base of the signage in the ground. So it is on our radar to communicate and emphasize those impacts to local community members as best we can well in advance. So more to come on that once we do have a better idea of what those construction impacts will be. And I think I said this last time, but always happy to resend any of the design documents, the location plan, if you're curious to look at that again. Any questions? All right, thank you all.
Okay, next up, BTC Activation Series, Lane.
Thank you, Sue. Just as a reminder, this activation series actually sprung out of some savings that we incurred from our budgeted EcoPass contracts. Kind of similar to the situation we're in right now. Last August was free rides throughout all the RTD districts. This year they've moved it to July and August. Hence, they gave us some refunds, if you will, from year to year on our contracts. So thanks to the support from both BJAD boards, we went ahead and contracted with Boulder Transportation Connections to provide activations in the area, bringing some recognition to Boulder Junction as a great TDM district with retail and restaurant and amazing ways to get out of one's vehicle. So we've had two smaller events take place, although the Bike Home Happy Hour that was on the Wednesday of Bike to Work Day saw just shy of 200 folks show up out at Zeal and enjoy. I got to hobnob with the mayor, and that was a great opportunity. Upcoming, we're going to be doing, and I'm sorry, the series is actually named Fun, all caps, FUN Function at Boulder Junction. So each one of them has that marketing tag. Upcoming September 14th, which is a Wednesday, is going to be our largest event. It will feature live music from Selassie and the Fa Fa family. So we truly are getting some funk from this one. So the title of that event will actually be FUNK Function. So look for that and more information. You can, I'm actually looking now, it's on the Chamber's website. And then the final activation will be Electrify October, which is on Wednesday, October 11th, again, 4 to 7 in the Boulder Junction area. The large event, September 14th, will be inclusive. We're actually going to do a temporary street closure of Junction Place. And then that entire plaza that's in front of the RTD entrance and just north of the Hyatt will be activated, live music, beer garden, lots of food. Questions? Suggestions?
I'll jump in if that's okay. So I know that there's been some delays or concerns in the past about reaching out to the property managers and making sure that residents are actually aware of these events going on. Do you have a comms plan for the September event that includes multiple touches?
Thank you. That's a great question, Rebecca. Actually, Karen at BTC has been working diligently with our own GIS department in order to identify the mailing addresses and to do a postcard series mailing that'll go directly. Yeah, so that's underway. I actually just met with them a couple of days ago, or it doesn't matter. Just met with them, and they are working hard to get that out and into the hands of those who need to. I guess there's some sort of issue with full buildings, like finding individual apartment numbers, but in any case, they're working towards that goal.
Anybody else have questions? Can I go again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Will there be fencing up around the plaza for this event?
So I've yet to see the site plan. In fact, BTC hired a consultant, an event consultant just recently. So she's still in the process of submitting requirements, particularly to the licensing department to pull a temporary alcohol permit. They will be required to put up 6-foot fencing wherever alcohol is sold and dispensed. What that looks like yet, I have not seen a site plan.
Okay, that's why I thought there might be fencing, because of the alcohol, and that's something that's really weird about Colorado, by the way, to me. Ideally, I think, you know, if we had the permission to actually shut down Junction Place there between the bridge and the bus entrance, right, so that it could take over the whole space, I think that would be a lot more activation. But what I would like to see on those fences is that reminders that it is a public event, because I think sometimes when you're passing by as a pedestrian or on your bike or anything like that, you see something cool happening, but you think it might be private, right? Especially if you didn't know ahead of time. So some kind of visual cue like, hey, yeah, come on in, but this is for you.
Great suggestion. We actually had our City of Boulder special events banner up at the Bike Home Happy Hour facing Pearl Parkway, and it did get a lot of attention. So, yes, it definitely has to be free and open to the public. Obviously, consumption of beverages would be on a cash basis, but the food will be provided and access to the music as well. Our plan is actually to leave the loading zone for the Hyatt open, so immediately north of Pearl Parkway there, that would be available for them to pull in and then do a U-turn out. So we'd put up our Class 3 barricade just north of that, and then, as you said, up the Goose Creek Bridge. Yeah, there was some discussion about whether that was necessary, and I thought, live music and a little bit of beer, and someone's gonna back into a vehicle, like, no, that's not a good idea.
Karen, the 6-foot fence, by the way, is the city, not the state of Colorado. Karen?
Hey, all, thanks for the discussion. While you're at the topic of the alcohol discussion, I guess I just would like to solicit some input on that as well too, because Rebecca brings up a great point about the fencing and the perception of whether or not it's public or not. Because we're at the stage where weighing, I'd say, cost options, whether we provide alcohol and sell alcohol versus working with the vendors on site, meaning, or the restaurants on site, specifically like Roadhouse Depot, and expanding their area. Because one idea is if we're working with Roadhouse Depot, and if they have if it's all the alcohol is under their liquor license, then we wouldn't necessarily have to put up fencing if they're the ones doing the alcohol rather than us. And I'm just wondering, love to get some input from the commissioners on that as to, yeah, how, I guess the question is sort of like how key of a role like the alcohol sales is in this, or if we were to gear more towards a more family friendly event and not have to do the fencing, is that a more inviting option? If that makes sense.
So as somebody who does a lot of these kind of events, I think that from your point of view, from BTC's point of view, if you can pawn off the alcohol on someone else, that's great because you're not going to make that much money on it. And it's going to, the process to get a permit is amazingly annoying. And then the 6-foot fencing is annoying. And then it's very hard to get donated alcohol. So you're going to end up having to buy it, and you're going to be lucky if you break even. You're going to be tips trained. It's a whole thing. So if you can have the restaurant do it, I would say do it. I personally think it makes it more friendly if it's not 6-foot fence. I think 6-foot fence is awful. It would just be the question of like, where would people be allowed to drink? Would they be allowed to drink on the patio at the Roadhouse, but then the event would sort of spill out into the plaza? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, presumably if like Roadhouse did it, there'd be a much, I guess, more confined area where the alcohol would be allowed, right? It's either in their property, or we'd have, like, we're going to have a conversation with them soon too to get a better understanding of that. But it could be quite limiting as to where the alcohol would be. But again, we wouldn't have to have the 6-foot fence. And to me, I think it would be a much more inviting, sort of all age inclusive sort of event to not have to have the fencing up.
Where would your food be?
The food can be in the plaza area and also potentially along the Boulder Junction place, that segment that would get closed. We're looking to close just the piece, just I guess I'd say like north of the access. So we'd still have access to the RTD parking garage as well as the Hyatt place, like parking garage as well. So access points to all of that, but we would just close that piece, the section of the road just west of the plaza. So we'll be able to put things on the plaza as well as Boulder Junction place, and with tents and so forth.
I think you just have to police it a little bit so that the alcohol stays within the Roadhouse, and make something about the Roadhouse and the alcohol fund so that people actually go there, and the Roadhouse is happy to do that piece of it, because if they're just kind of an afterthought, they're not going to be happy either. So maybe some tables or something can be over there too, maybe divide up the event a little bit, but I also am thinking more of like what is easier for BTC, and certainly not serving alcohol is.
Just want to clarify though, with the liquor license that's held by the Roadhouse by state law has to have containment. So it's not like they can serve alcohol and people can just wander around up to the band. They'll have to, an extension of their patio, which would be probably maybe a 4-foot fence or a 3-foot fence. The 6-foot fence comes in when you're doing it on city-owned property, and that particular plaza is not city-owned.
Okay, so then you're not being clear. So if it's not city-owned, they still would have to stay on the Roadhouse patio to drink, or Roadhouse would allow to extend their patio a little bit?
if the Roadhouse chooses to go through the BLA, they would have to get a temporary modification of their own existing liquor license. Currently, their license,
Gotcha, yeah.
they can serve on that patio, but if we're expecting over 500 guests, it's not like everyone's going to be able to cram into that little patio. They would want to temporarily modify. So then in that case, they still have to create what's called containment. Doesn't have to be 6 feet, but it has to be containment. So you usually see that event fencing, that orange, construction fencing is a quick pop up. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that there has to be some delineation.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I worked in an event at a climbing gym, and that must be why they had that. That explains what you just said.
Okay, you answered one of my questions, was whether or not the Roadhouse could extend temporarily. So I think that might be a good option. I think any agreement with them would have to allow food from the event into that area, right? So even if the alcohol can't leave the extended area or that patio, right? We want people to be able to have their food and have their alcohol that they're buying. When I think about Bands on the Bricks, right, like the section that's allowed for alcohol does feel like you're being segregated, which is kind of weird. So
I actually changed it this year. There's no more beer cage. It's actually the entire block is fenced in. So yeah, exactly. It was they took a big challenge, but yeah, they typically only did that at Fall Festival, and then it was so well received that they're actually doing it tonight for Chip's going away party, by the way. So
I am so excited. That's fantastic. All right. It felt really segregated there. Let's see. I guess one other thing I'll ask about with the concept of allowing Roadhouse to do it, right, is that we do have a lot of residents that are lower income in the district. And I don't know if, the Roadhouse has offerings or would offer a discount on sales for this event to make some of the drinks more affordable.
We can certainly bring that point and ask them about that as well.
says here that happy hour is served there daily between 3 and 6, so there'll be an automatic discount for some of the event, it would seem.
Any other comments? All right, well, look forward to seeing you there. Next up is commission recruitment update. With no one's name next to it.
So I'll give a brief update. Well, as presented in the meeting packet, the city clerk's office did not receive any applications for BJED parking, but did receive 2 for BJED TDM. They were both unfortunately ineligible. However, I just received an exciting update about 2 minutes prior to our meeting tonight. John Morse from the city clerk's office said just under the wire, we do have an eligible applicant for BJED TDM. This person, I don't have any information, but this person will be interviewed soon. And just assuming all goes well, the candidate will be appointed at the city council meeting on August 3rd. So I'll keep you all updated.
Great.
And just to confirm, applications are closed, right?
Yes, applications are closed. City council last week discussed the possibility of extending the window for mid-year recruitment, but they decided not to. So the next recruitment cycle will be in 2024.
Great, thanks. Matters from the Commissioner, BJED Phase 2 Focus Group update. I've been wondering about this because I haven't gotten invited to any of these things. Have you, Ryan?
Yeah, so the last one was pretty last minute. I mean, I think I got the invite a day or two before, if I'm remembering. I'd have to look, but I was able to attend it, but I was a little late, so I can provide an update on the content there. The next one is tomorrow. So if you haven't
To
received,
not be on the mailing list, because I did not get any of these notices. Is there some way you can reach out to whoever's sending this and copy me and then tell them
Yeah.
because I didn't get any of this.
yeah, I can let them know to send you an invite. I'll do that
Okay.
after the meeting here.
Thank you. I guess you have to speak on it because I'm there.
Yeah, so I did miss part of it, so I didn't see all of what they discussed, but the presentation that I did see was regarding the process that they're going through to evaluate changes in the phase 2 area related to land use code. So that was a majority of the discussion was around the land use designations in the phase 2 area. So they showed a few different potential options for what the map of that phase 2 area would look like. Almost all of them were based around showing the TVAP phase 2 in 3 sections. So they have the area, the Wilderness Place area. So I think that's north of the Goose Creek path. They have the Old Pearl area between Goose Creek and Pearl Parkway, and then they have the South Pearl Parkway area. That's the kind of warehouse area that's south of the parkway there. So the different options discussed different land use designations in those each of those 3. I think the one that they, I think, adopted in the East Boulder area plan was the MUTOD, which I think is related to a multi-use transit oriented. And so this designation provides a lot of flexibility. They are doing community outreach and cross-departmental research, so they haven't made any decisions as far as I understand. But they haven't sent anything to council yet, anything like that. So they're still a little bit early there. I don't know what the intended content is for the meeting tomorrow, but I can report on that. And hopefully, Sue, we're able to get you there too if you're available. It's 6 to 8 p.m. So not necessarily a super convenient time, but anyways, they did ask for a decent amount of feedback. I provided a little bit just around it being exciting to think about the phase 2 area as multi-use, vibrant, etc. Continuing to make Boulder Junction kind of an important area within the city and in a destination within the city. And so that was kind of very high level input I gave them. It would be exciting to hear from you all if you have other comments around what you might envision there. You could say them now or send an email after, etc. But love to represent the entire board if there are requests for feedback in that meeting. So I think that was all that I wrote down. One other note I have in my note here is just around the placement of a transit station, a train station. In addition to, obviously, we already have the RTD station, which isn't open, I think, but the train station is still part of what they're looking at, assuming we do get a train. Maybe that doesn't happen, so they wouldn't obviously build anything for that if we didn't get the train, but they are planning. It sounds like they're just. We got the report a few meetings ago, I think, about the same planning that they're doing around the potential for a train station. So there was some discussion about that. Anyways, I'll be done there. Yeah, any thoughts, comments, questions that I can take to the meeting from you all?
I'll just clarify for a second. My understanding is that the train platform is proposed for the western side of the tracks, i.e. in our district, up by Spark. So whereas the tunnel would be joining both, so.
Correct, yeah, so they did talk about the walking tunnel underneath the tracks as being planned, and I think that's potentially planned regardless of whether a train ever comes, of whether the station ever comes or not, but it would be in the same area where the potential platform would be.
A matter that you could maybe take back is whether or not they're looking at any of the local businesses that they want to preserve in the district. Specifically thinking about things like Camp Bow Wow, right? So dog boarding, pet boarding, that's within the district that serves all of the residents. The backyard or the junkyard, obviously things like Sanitas on, south of Pearl, like, are we giving thought to those businesses and how we retain them so that it remains a complete thing. The other one would be Shemaine's Bakery, right? So that's up in the wilderness place, right? So those are all really good local services.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some discussion about that from other different city commission and board members that had similar questions and concerns. The comments from the city when they brought those up was that even changing the land use designation to MUTOD, it doesn't force any change to the actual use today. I think it's only if redevelopment occurs. And so I think the thought was that nothing happens overnight. These businesses will have plenty of opportunity to stay where they are.
Yeah, but I think most of them are renters. Maybe not Camp Bow Wow, but I think the other ones are renters. And so when we're looking at future redevelopment, moving a business or even moving residents, right, when something's being redeveloped, even with right to return, it can be very cost prohibitive to establish elsewhere and stuff like that. So how do we keep them in district even as redevelopment is happening and ease that? So,
Good. I took a note about that. Thanks. One thing I thought is it would be interesting to try to get the meeting material from those meetings, any of the packets just delivered to the board, to our board. So I'll ask about that tomorrow. I can't remember if I think I might have received some material after the first meeting. But either way, I'll ask about for both the previous one and the one tomorrow, if we can have the materials sent to the board.
there's some public outreach happening soon too as well. Do you have that date?
I don't.
I'm gonna go look for it for a second.
Does anybody have any other questions for Ryan? Okay, anything else before we adjourn? It says the next meeting September 20th. I won't be there, but usually they send something to see, who can make it. So Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, we did have in the last meeting, there was the matter from commissioners about the mill levy and the kind of the long-term economics of the two districts I talked about today. So I think that once all of us can be, including Chris, probably at the same meeting, that would be the right time probably to go back through what everybody's hopes and dreams are for that, right? Like we keep kind of touching at it in different meetings, but not having the full conversation. So I don't know how to have the full conversation.
Yeah, I guess if the staff on this call can carry that back.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, motion to adjourn, sorry.
No worries.
Somebody make a motion. Robin.
I'll make a motion. It's my day for making motions. I have motion to.
Second. I'll second. Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Actually, Robert's rules stipulates that the chair can adjourn the meeting, if there's make any motion.